The Thompson family home was aglow with twinkling lights and the scent of cinnamon candles on Christmas Eve. The living room was a picture-perfect holiday scene, a towering Christmas tree, meticulously wrapped gifts, and a table set with Sarah Thompson's signature holiday flair. Yet beneath the festive surface, unspoken tensions simmered. 8-year-old Lily, the youngest of the family, sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, staring intently at the ornaments. She fiddled with a small angel figurine in her hands, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Across the room, her older brother Max scrolled absent-mindedly through his phone, while their parents exchanged polite but distant remarks about the next day's plans. "Mom?" Lily's small voice broke through the holiday hum. "Yes, sweetie," Sarah replied, carefully arranging a platter of cookies. Lily hesitated, her big curious eyes darting between her parents. What if Christmas isn't real? The room fell silent. Max looked up from his phone, startled. Mike, their father, paused mid-sip of his eggnog. Sarah froze, her hands gripping the cookie platter. "What do you mean, honey?" Sarah asked, forcing a smile, though her voice wavered. Lily shrugged, her face scrunched in confusion. Like, what if it's just stuff we do, but it doesn't really mean anything? The words hung in the air like an unwelcome chill. Sarah quickly recovered, letting out a nervous laugh. "Oh, sweetie, Christmas is about so much. It's about family, love, and giving." "But you and Dad always fight when we set up the tree," Lily said earnestly. "And Max doesn't even like Christmas, so does it still count?" Max groaned, setting his phone down. "Way to call me out, Lily." "I'm just saying," Lily protested, her voice tinged with worry. "Is it all pretend?" Mike cleared his throat, trying to ease the moment. "Lily, Christmas it's real because we make it real, okay? It's about being together." "Then why don't we feel together?" she asked innocently, her eyes brimming with tears. That question shattered the fragile facade of holiday cheer. Sarah's face flushed, and Mike looked down at his hands. Max shifted uncomfortably, suddenly feeling exposed. No one had an answer. Sarah forced a smile again, trying to redirect the conversation. "How about we watch a Christmas movie? That'll get us in the spirit." But the damage was done. Lily's question lingered, digging into each family member like an invisible splinter. Later that night, as Lily lay in bed, she overheard muffled voices from the kitchen. Sarah and Mike's argument, once kept under tight wraps, spilled out like cracks in a dam. "I'm doing everything I can to make this Christmas special," Sarah hissed. "I don't need her questioning everything." "And I'm the one footing the bill for your special, Sarah. Do you think I don't notice how much we're struggling?" Mike shot back. From the living room, Max stared at the ceiling, listening to his parents argue, his fists clenched. He couldn't bring himself to go back downstairs, knowing he'd only be another target in the crossfire. Lily pressed her pillow against her ears, but her own words echoed in her mind. What if Christmas isn't real? For the first time, she felt the weight of those words, and the cracks she'd unintentionally revealed. The next morning, the Thompson family woke to a gray and overcast Christmas day. The usual excitement of stockings and presents was muted. The tension from the previous night hung heavy in the air. Lily tiptoed into the living room and sat quietly by the Christmas tree, her small fingers tracing the patterns on a gift tag. The room was eerily still until Sarah entered, her smile stretched tight. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," she said softly, handing Lily a steaming mug of cocoa. Lily didn't respond right away. She took a sip and looked up. "Mom, why were you and Dad fighting last night?" Sarah froze, her mask slipping for just a moment. "Oh, sweetie, grown-ups just disagree sometimes. It doesn't mean we don't love each other." Lily tilted her head, unconvinced. "If we love each other, why don't we act like it?" Before Sarah could answer, Mike trudged in, his expression weary. "What's for breakfast?" he muttered, avoiding Sarah's gaze. Lily watched her parents exchange curt nods, their smiles forced. Max appeared next, headphones in, making no effort to join the family conversation. The disjointed dynamic was impossible to ignore. As the day wore on, the family went through the motions of Christmas. They opened presents, but the joy felt hollow. Sarah beamed as Lily unwrapped a shiny new doll, but the little girl's excitement quickly faded. Max barely glanced at his gifts, muttering a half-hearted thanks before disappearing back to his room. The breaking point came during dinner. The turkey sat untouched as Sarah and Mike's simmering frustrations boiled over into another argument. "I worked so hard to make this day special, and you can't even pretend to care," Sarah snapped, her voice shaking. "Special? You mean expensive," Mike shot back. "Do you even see how much pressure you're putting on all of us?" "Stop it," Lily's small voice cut through the room. She was standing now, tears streaming down her face. "Why can't we just be happy? It's Christmas. Isn't this supposed to be about love?" The room fell silent. Sarah's face crumpled as she reached for Lily, but the little girl stepped back, her tiny frame trembling. "Christmas isn't real," Lily whispered, echoing her question from the night before. "It's just pretending." Later that night, Sarah sat alone in the living room, staring at the dimmed lights on the Christmas tree. Her mind replayed Lily's words, piercing through the armor she'd built around herself. Mike found her there, his expression softer than it had been all day. "She's not wrong," he said quietly, sitting beside her. Sarah turned to him, startled. "What do you mean?" "All of this. It's for show, isn't it? We're putting up lights and buying gifts, hoping it'll fix what's broken underneath." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted to give them the Christmases I never had. Growing up, it was always chaos, yelling, and I wanted this to be different." Mike took her hand, his voice gentle. "I know, But maybe we've been so focused on making everything perfect, we've forgotten what it's supposed to mean. Meanwhile, Max found Lily curled up in her bed, her face buried in her pillow. He hesitated before sitting on the edge of her bed, awkwardly patting her back. "Hey, Squirt," he said softly. "I heard what you said earlier. You're not wrong about Mom and Dad. But you're not wrong about Christmas either." Lily peeked up at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Max sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Christmas isn't about the tree or the presents or even Mom's weird candle obsession. It's about us, being here, together, even if we're kinda bad at it." Lily sniffled. "But we're not happy." Max gave a small smile. "Not yet, but maybe we could be, if we tried." By midnight, the house was quiet. Sarah and Mike had fallen asleep on the couch, their hands still intertwined. Max stayed up late playing a board game with Lily, their laughter faint but real. The day hadn't been perfect. It had been messy, raw, and emotional. But for the first time, the Thompsons began to see the cracks not as flaws, but as openings to something more real. The house was quieter than usual for Christmas morning. Wrapping paper from hastily unwrapped gifts was strewn across the floor, a stark contrast to the uneaten breakfast on the dining table. Sarah, Mike, and Jake sat awkwardly in the living room, while Lily played quietly with her stuffed bear, her earlier question still echoing in their minds. What if Christmas isn't real? Sarah broke the silence, her voice trembling. "I think we need to talk." Mike looked up, his face a mix of exhaustion and confusion. "What do you mean?" "About us," Sarah said, swallowing hard. "About why this feels so empty." Jake, usually quick with a sarcastic remark, stayed silent. He stared at his phone but wasn't scrolling, just holding it, as though using it as a shield against the tension in the room. Sarah turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, can you play in your room for a little while? Mommy and Daddy need to talk." Lily nodded solemnly, clutching her bear and walking to her room. Before she closed the door, she turned and said softly, "I hope you find Christmas." The words hit Sarah and Mike like a brick wall. Sarah took a deep breath. "Mike, do you even see how hard I try? Every year I do everything, planning, shopping, decorating, and it's like none of it matters. You're never present. You're here, but you're not here." Mike's jaw tightened. "And you think I don't care? Do you know how many hours I work just to make sure we can afford all this?" He gestured to the Christmas tree, the gifts, the house. "That's exactly the problem," Sarah's voice cracked. "We're so focused on making it perfect, we've forgotten what it's supposed to mean. And Jake," she glanced at her son, her eyes brimming with tears. "You barely talk to us anymore. It's like we're strangers." Jake finally looked up, guilt flashing across his face. "I don't talk because it feels like no one cares what I have to say. You're always arguing or busy or... I don't know, I just stopped trying." Mike slumped back in his chair, the weight of Jake's words sinking in. "We've been so caught up in our own worlds," he said quietly. "We've lost each other." Lily reappeared at the doorway, holding something in her tiny hands, a crumpled Christmas card she'd made at school. She walked over to Sarah and handed it to her. "Mommy, this is for you. I made it before Christmas stopped being real." Sarah opened the card, her tears spilling over as she read the uneven, childlike letters. "Dear Mommy and Daddy, I love you because you're my family. You don't have to be perfect." Mike leaned over, reading the card over Sarah's shoulder. His throat tightened, and for the first time in years, he reached out to hold Sarah's hand. She didn't pull away. Jake, watching from the couch, shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, this is kinda corny, but, she's not wrong." Sarah smiled through her tears and patted the seat beside her. "Come here, Jake." He hesitated before sitting down, and Lily climbed into Mike's lap, her bear still tucked under her arm. For a moment, the family sat together in silence, their physical closeness something they hadn't felt in years. "Maybe Christmas doesn't have to be about the tree or the presents," Sarah said softly. "Maybe it's about this. United States. Being together." Mike nodded, his voice thick. "I think we've been trying so hard to make it perfect that we forgot why we were doing it in the first place." Jake smirked. "So, no more over-the-top matching pajamas next year?" Sarah laughed, wiping her tears. "We'll see." They decided to spend the rest of the day doing something they hadn't done in years, talking. They shared memories of past Christmases, both good and bad. Mike opened up about the stress of work. Sarah admitted how much she'd been struggling to keep everything together. And Jake, for the first time, talked about the pressure he felt to live up to their expectations. As the sun set, they sat on the living room floor, eating leftovers straight from the containers, laughing at Lily's attempts to make her stuffed bear dance Christmas music. The house was messy, the presents forgotten in the corner, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like Christmas. That night, as Sarah tucked Lily into bed, her daughter whispered, "Did we find Christmas?" Sarah kissed her forehead. "I think we did, sweetheart. I think we did." Lily smiled sleepily, her eyes closing as she clutched her bear. Sarah stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her daughter, and whispered to herself, "Maybe Christmas was never lost. Maybe we just forgot how to see it." Downstairs, Mike and Jake were finishing a board game, their laughter carrying through the house. For the first time, it felt like they were a family again. Not perfect, not polished, but real. And that, Sarah thought, was the greatest gift of all.